into the B gap and maintain your C gap responsibility. One of the biggest things for young kids is they will say, Coach, I had the C gap. I maintained the C gap. I did not, I controlled my foxhole. And what we try to emphasize with our kids is try to take your offensive blocker and push him back into the next gap and make it much easier for your linebackers to play. Don't be content just to sit there and let there be a big B gap. Another problem we have to really work hard on our kids is do not be over aggressive and cross his face into the B gap, which a lot of the young kids will do. They'll see the ball going in there, they will go into the B gap, they will leave their C gap, which is their responsibility, and the ball will bounce out to where they should be. If our defensive tackle gets a tight end offensive tackle double team, we're going to use the same technique as the nose guard. Split it. If you can't split it, go down on a knee, pull the blocker down on you. Traps. Our D tackles know that the biggest thing that they really have to defend are traps, and we are going to wrong arm and trap the trapper. Inside release by the offensive tackle. That cannot happen. Never allow a clean release inside by the offensive tackle. You have to deliver a blow with your inside hand and stun him just a little bit, because your job is to protect that inside linebacker. Keep shoulders parallel, squeeze down, leave no space. If an offensive tackle wants to go inside of our defensive tackle, we expect that defensive tackle to have his hip attached right to the hip of that offensive tackle. There cannot be a gap there. Your inside hip to his outside hip. And if he's going inside, expect an option or a trap. Another key phase that we use, we never tell our defensive tackles or our defensive ends, you have dive or quarterback or pitch on the option. We simply tell our D tackles, never let a back cross your face. So if they stick the ball in the belly of a fullback and he's running through there, even if you see the quarterback starting to pull that ball out of that fullback's belly, we expect our D tackles to stick with the fullback and tackle him. We do not want them being involved in a guessing game. Pass rush, controlled pass rush, stay in your passing lane. Slant technique. The defensive tackle will use the same basic slant technique that the nose guard used. Now, anytime our D tackle is slanting, he'll line in a 4 technique. Now, we may line in a 4 technique, and the offensive lineman assumes now that we're slanting, but we will stem before the ball is snapped back to a 5 technique. But we do not try to have our D tackles slant to a B gap from a 5 technique. I know some people can, we just do not teach that. D tackle must be able to slant and redirect to defend a play away, just like the nose guard did. He will also be taught the slam technique, same as the nose guard. Slam technique, as I've demonstrated on the board, is a 45-degree angle with his inside foot aiming for the V of the neck of the offensive guard. Now, he also will read the offensive lineman that he is slanting toward, which will be an offensive guard. Now, I'd like to go over the progression right now on the whiteboard as just exactly how we teach this in practice, our defensive line coach with our nose guards and our defensive tackles. This is what we pretty much do every day that we have a defensive practice that our defensive players are going to work on. We're going to take our defensive tackle and we're going to put him in a 5 technique, okay? 5 technique is the outside shoulder of the offensive tackle. And what we'll do is we'll pair these up. These will be other defensive tackles that will be working against each other. And then what we're going to do, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have this offensive tackle simply move his hands, okay? That's the first thing we want him to do. As soon as that offensive tackle moves his hand off the ground, we expect our defensive tackle to step with his inside foot and strike a blow into this offensive tackle. And that's it. That's as far as the drill is going to go. All we're trying to do is come off the ball and strike the man that's in front of you. Now, what we're more concerned about is we're going to take some of the base blocks that we feel that our defensive tackle is going to have to face. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at a reach. We're going to look at a base. And we're going to look at a veer. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to start out with we're going to have this offensive tackle step with his outside foot in an attempt to reach our defensive tackle. And our defensive tackle is going to do all of his footwork. He's going to step with his inside foot. He's going to strike a blow on this offensive tackle. He is going to move his hips, not just his head. He's got to move his hips outside the shoulders of the offensive tackle. And we're going to do everything that we've taught them as far as striking a blow, getting separation, getting off this guy, and getting up the field to protect your C gap and not being reached. Okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to turn around and we're going to have this offensive tackle base block our defensive tackle, blocking him out as if the ball is coming up through here through the B gap. If this were the offensive guard and this were the tight end. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to again step with our inside foot, get our hands on this offensive tackle. Now we're going to do everything we can to press him back into the B gap, meaning C gap responsibility for our defensive tackle. The third thing they're going to do is they're going to get a veer release inside by the offensive tackle as if he is going to block a linebacker. It's at this point that this kid really has to squeeze it down, get his hands on this guy, and we want him to end up hip to hip on this offensive tackle for as long as he possibly can. So reach, base, and veer is something that our kids are going to work on every particular day as what they have to defeat. What we're going to do is after we do that, then we're going to progress and we are going to add a tight end. Now we have two offensive linemen there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add a tight end offensive tackle double team. Okay, we know that they can't run the ball. They should not be able to run the ball off tackle into the C gap unless they double team with the tight end and with the offensive tackle. Now, we've already gone over how he is supposed to defeat that double team. Defeat one of the blockers. If he cannot, then he's to make a pile right here. So we have the double team between those two particular guys. Now, we also know that another scheme that could be used, we will have a dummy here that will not be an outside linebacker or a defensive end for us. We know that we could get a down block by the tight end and a pull by the tackle, which would be what we call a cross block. So again, our tight end is going to step. He's going to feel pressure from the tight end. He's going to see the tackle disappear, and he will do everything he can to squeeze that ball back into the C gap. Now, these are every day that we're going to do this with our defensive tackle. Now, once we have worked, I think a very key important aspect of teaching kids is you don't want negativity. You want kids to be successful. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to tell this kid, we are working on reach block. He knows the reach block is what is coming. And we'll go right down the list. And they pretty much know each day. Our kids can just get in there and they know reach block is first, then base, then veer, then these other two. Once we get past that point and we feel our kids have gotten a lot better at it, then we're not going to tell them which one of these blocks is taking place. The coach will stand right back here. Coach will be right back here, and he will signal to these two guys exactly what block he wants. And now our player will have to react to the block that he sees. But I think a very key aspect, and I hope I'm getting it across to you, is don't go out there and put this kid out here. Even though you've showed him on a whiteboard, you've showed him on film, you've walked him through it, don't go out here and then just start mixing up these blocks and expecting him to be successful. Do everything you can to prepare him to be successful. Okay, now we're going to look at our nose guard, and we're going to have a progression for our nose guard just like we had a progression for our defensive tackles. Now, what we're going to do is the basic block that our nose guard is going to see is a reach block. Same thing that our defensive tackle was going to see. So we're going to start out and we're going to work with a reach block. Either way, against our nose guard. But what we're going to do is we're going to let our nose guard know which way we're reaching. Again, we're not going out to practice trying for this kid to fool this kid. We want this kid to have success. So therefore, we're going to tell him, we're reach blocking you to the right. And we're going to work on footwork, defeating the reach block to the right. Then we will go to the left. And that is the key block. That is really the only block other than a pass block that our nose guard is going to get when it is strictly the center involved in the block. Now, where it's going to change for us in phase 2 for us is now we're going to add the offensive guards. Now, when we add the offensive guards, we know that what we're going to see is we're going to get a double team. So again, we're going to get a center, guard, double team. So we're going to work on that right there. Our nose guard, we've been through it. We've gone over all the phases of it, and now we're doing it in practice. And we expect this kid to only try to defeat one of these two blockers, preferably the guard. If not, split the seam. Then we'll go over and we'll work center guard double team to the left. That is the next phase, the next thing that they're going to see. Then we're going to get one of two things. We are going to get either guard pulling away, guard pulling to. So now what we're going to do is we're going to step into the center. We're more than likely going to get a reach block. Now we are going to read the next lineman, and if it's guard pulling to, we're going to try to come right down the line as best we can. If we get guard pulling away, we will not go back door. We do not want to go back door. If guard's pulling away, more than likely we're either going to get a reach block by the center or we potentially could get a double team by the off guard and the center. So we're going to get guard pulling to and guard pulling away. And we're going to work that very, very hard. In the leagues where we play, we get a lot of teams that are wing T type teams where the guards are pulling. And our nose guard cannot be content to simply defeat the reach block and stay in his A gap. The guards will take us to the play more often than not. And based on, like I said, the leagues that we play, we have to defend the run. And that's something that we're going to have to do. We also have what we consider a triangle block. Now, there aren't a lot of teams that do it, but there are times, specifically in some past situations, that we're going to get a straight up block by the center, both guards down on the nose guard, and they're simply trying to cut him off from wherever he's slanting. So all three will go on the nose guard, and he will have to again defeat the double team of one of those two, one way or the other. His basic key will be a back out of the backfield, whichever way that particular back might go. So reach block, basic block, nose guard has to defeat. Double team by our guard in the center, that's a second block that our nose guard has to defeat. And very, very rarely do you get a triangle block, but it will happen. Okay, now I want to look at slanting. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit difficult for our nose guards and our tackles. Let's go with our nose guard first. When we are slanting or angling, slant is to strength, angle is away from strength. When our nose guard slants, we expect him to defeat the center if the center is reaching him. We're going to back our nose guard off the line of scrimmage a little bit when he is slanting. Now, the key is when you slant, you have got to read the next guy that you are slanting to. So in this particular case, if we're slanting to the left, as we slant, we're not concerned about the center. We want to get our eyes. Our eyes have got to come right here to this offensive guard. What is this offensive guard doing? And again, if he's pulling this way, we expect to fight our way back across and down the line. If he is pulling this way, we expect to get right in his hip pocket and follow him right down the line. So when we are slanting, say we're slanting this way, our eyes have got to go to the next offensive lineman to the side that we are slanting to. Okay? Now, let's just go right down here and we will put our defensive tackle. He is doing the same thing. He is slanting. His eyes, just like the nose guard, has to go right here to this offensive guard. This offensive guard will either pull this way, he will pull this way, or he will come out to block a linebacker. The toughest for us is when we are slanting and play goes away from the slant. This kid has got to what we call redirect and come back down for the ball. And those are just key things that we have to learn to do, and we're going to do them in practice, okay? Now, more often than not, as we progress, we're teaching it on one side, but then we will go and we will do both. We'll have two tackles, and we'll just work on slanting both directions. Okay, what we'd like to look at right now, and I've really tried to emphasize early in this clinic presentation, is that we believe so much in group drills. And we have what we call our 3-on-7. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take an offensive line, and we're going to take all 7 of them, 2 tight ends, and we're going to put in our nose guard. We're going to put in our defensive tackles. They'll be lined up. These guys will be in a 4 technique. He's in a 0 technique. He's in a 4 technique. Okay? And then what we are going to do is we're going to call strength. So the coach will be standing back here, and he will call, if we want to go 50 angle. We know that 50 angle means that we are slanting to strength. And the coach will make a call. Left, left, left. Coach makes a call. We know that we are slanting this way. Okay? And then what we will do is we will already have it scripted. Now this is very, very important. Don't go out to practice and try to do this and then tell 7 guys what you want them to do. We will have a blocking scheme. And that blocking scheme will be on a piece of cardboard, and it'll be color coded. And all the coach back here has to do is show these 7 guys the blocking scheme he wants. So let's say it is a G. So we got a down block by the tight end. We got an inside release by that offensive tackle. We got a guard pulling the trap over here. We got a reach block, a scoop, a scoop. That's a blocking scheme that would be on a sheet for our offensive line coach to show the offensive line. So what we're going to do is this coach is going to make the call, 50 angle, left. These guys go left, left, left. And here goes our slant. And here's the blocking scheme. And then these 3 kids react to that blocking scheme. We are not concerned about plays. We have no ball carrier. All we're concerned about is these 3 kids reacting to the blocking scheme that they see. I would say we spend a good majority of our practice schedule, our practice plan, this drill right here, 3-on-7, with the 3 down linemen against 7 offensive linemen. Okay, what we'd like to do right now is let's look at a few of the defensive calls that our tackle and our nose guard is going to have in our 50 defense, because we have been very, very, very rarely have we had defensive teams that could just sit there and play what we consider a 50 read, with a nose guard playing a 0, with 2 gap techniques, both A's, and the tackles playing 5 technique and playing the C gaps. We just don't have that type of kids, so that's why we're moving all the time. 50 read is our base defense. If we could go into a ball game and we could play 50 read, like I said, both D tackles playing a 5 technique, they have C gap responsibility, that would be fantastic. Very, very rarely can we do that. 50 angle to us is our defensive tackle to strength, plays read, which is C gap, and our defensive tackle away slants to the weak side B gap. And strength to us, like I've said earlier, is not the tight end. Strength to us is going to be to the 2 receiver side. If there are not 2 receivers, it'll be to the wide side of the field. When we get slant, we are slanting to the weak side of the offensive formation. So our strong side tackle would be slanting, our weak side tackle would be playing his C gap. Now, we also have what we call 50B strong, 50B weak, and 50 double B. Now, all that tells the defensive tackle is, first thing he's going to hear in the huddle, he's going to hear 50, be strong. Now, neither one of those two defensive tackles knows which one is going to slant into the B gap. They have to wait until the linebackers call strength. So as an example, in the huddle, if we say 50, be strong, they come out and the linebackers say left, left, left. Our left defensive tackle knows that he is the defensive tackle that is slanting to the B gap. The other defensive tackle would simply play his 5 technique C gap responsibility. Same thing holds true for 50B weak and for 50 double B. And if in doubt, we go a lot of 50 double B. That's a lot easier for our inside linebackers. We have 50 C strong, and we have 50 C weak, and we have 50 double C. All that's going to do, if our defensive tackle hears C, whether it's strong, double, or weak, our D tackle knows that he does the same thing that he does on B. All that does is tell us is that the defensive end is now going to slant into the C gap, which was his responsibility. We also have what we call gap stack strong. Strong defensive tackle